Okay, today we are going to be talking about adding real numbers. And before we start talking about how to add real numbers, there are two properties we need to be aware of that go along with the addition. The first one is the identity property of addition. And the identity property of addition states that for every real number n plus 0 equals n. So for example, we could have 5 plus 0, and the answer would be 5. Okay? That would also be true for if we had negative 2 plus 0. All right, it would equal negative 2. Okay? Our second property that we have is the inverse property of addition. And when you're thinking about the inverse property of addition, the main word here is inverse, which means um, the opposite oftentimes. So for every real number n, there is an additive inverse negative n, such that n plus negative n equals 0. So to put that in actual English words rather than mathematical terms, if we had a real number, let's say 5 again, and we took its additive inverse, and the additive inverse is basically the opposite. It is negative 5. When we were to add those two terms together, okay, put parentheses around just to separate it a little bit more, the outcome would be 0, okay? That would be the same with negative 2. If we took negative 2 and we took the additive inverse, which would be 2, and we added those two together, the answer would also be 0, okay? All right, so going into some examples, we are going to be talking about how to solve the addition problems using real numbers. And oftentimes you can do this using a number line. This is a really, really good way to visually see how the numbers are being added together. Okay, so our first problem we're going to be working on is negative 6 plus 4. Negative 6 plus 4. So what we can do here is we can start with the first number. So in this case, it's negative 6. All right, so we can start right there on negative 6. And we are adding 4. Because we're adding a positive 4, we're going to go that way, okay? We are going to go to the right. So in this case, we're going to be going 4 spots. So we can go 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in this case, we are ending on negative 2. So negative 6 plus 4 equals to negative 2. Okay? Alright, we'll do another example. Um, in this next example, we have 4 plus negative 6. So in this case, we're starting on the positive side of the number sign. Okay? And we are adding a negative number. When we're adding a negative number, we're going to go this way. We're going to go to the left. Okay? Because we're adding a negative number, you're going more negative. Okay? So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? So in this case, we have negative 2 also. Okay? All right. Our third example is when we are adding two negative numbers together. So we start at negative 3. And because we're adding a negative number, we're getting more negative. So in this case, we would go more negative um, 8 times. So to the left 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, running out of room, 8, which would be at negative 11. Okay, so the answer here would be negative 11. All right, write down any questions you have about this in your notebook and we can go over it tomorrow, but it is pretty self-explanatory. Okay? All right, the second part of our lesson that we're going to be talking about today are something called a matrix. And a matrix is defined as a rectangular arrangement of numbers in rows and columns. Okay? So what that means is it's a problem that looks like this. So this problem right here that's inside the bracket um, would be considered a matrix. And inside each matrix is what's called an element. So an element is what's inside each matrix. So for example, um, this whole thing right here would be considered the matrix, and like the 2 would be considered the element. Okay? And when we are adding these two together, we kind of read it like a book in a way, and we're corresponding things. So for example, what I mean by that is we are going to take the 1 and add it to the 3. We're going to go 1 plus 3. So we are going to get 4. Okay? Then we're going to go negative 4 plus 5. And negative 4 plus 5 is 1. All right, then we're going to go to the bottom row. We have negative 7 plus negative 5. All right, and in this case, it's going to be negative 12 because we're getting more negative. And last but not least, the bottom corner, we have 2 plus 4. 2 plus 4, or 2 plus 2, sorry, excuse me. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So our answer would look just like this. Okay? Let's do another example. So, in this case, um, we're just going to solve, and this one is pretty, a lot more simple. So we have, this one just has one column in each matrix, so we can just jump from one to the other. So we have 3 plus 1. So 3 plus 1 is 4. Negative 4 plus 0, so we have negative 4. And last but not least, we have 7 plus 3, so that would be 10. All right, and that would be the matrix. Now what's happening with this second problem, as you can notice, there's 2 columns here, but there's only 1 column here. So in this case, we actually can't solve that matrix because they are not the same size matrix. Okay? So just to recap on what we have talked about, we've talked about adding real numbers, right, using a number line, along with those 2 properties, and also what a matrix and what the elements of a matrix are. Please come to class with all of your questions.